So good evening, everyone. I think we should start, even though there will probably be people coming in a little bit later, but we won't mind them, right? Okay, so today's debate night will be hosted partly by me and partly by Nusha. And I would like to start with a few introductory remarks. So the Slovenian university experience, which you're also a part of, might warrant taking free tertiary education for granted, right? But free tertiary education is by no means the case across the world. In most countries around the globe, as far as I was able to check, tertiary education is actually not subsidized by the government, but rather the privilege of those who can afford it. So, there has been some concern voiced about such freebies being subject to underappreciation. So, tonight's debate teams are going to discuss the idea of so much for punctuality. Okay, so tonight's debate teams are going to discuss the idea of covering the cost of your tertiary education to ensure that the government in case you do not finish your tertiary education in the time given, to ensure that the government subsidized system of publicly funded education is not abused. So the motion is, it's very long. The debate team tried to shorten it, but it was impossible. So where tertiary education is free, this House believes that students who fail to finish their studies in a given time should pay back the cost of their university education. I mean, there have been attempts to also introduce university fees in Slovenia, which were all unsuccessful so far, but maybe something like this might make more sense. Okay, so let me introduce the debate team. On side proposition. Okay. Traumatic pause. You are invisible. Yeah. Secure. Secure at all. Okay. So on side proposition, our very own, right, from the Department of English, the Faculty of Arts, it's Lenča Ambrožić. Give her a round of applause. Then Peter Adamić from the Medical Faculty. And Samo Planins from the Faculty of Law. On theme opposition, ladies first, so it's Lučka Guna, Department of Psychology, Matija Pušnik from the Faculty of Law, right? And Benjamin Zupančić, also the Faculty of Law. Okay, so now I'm going to give the floor over to Nusha, who's going to explain the format of the debate, right? So for those who are not familiar with it yet.
Hey everyone, first of all, well, thanks to the Department of English, who's been hosting us for a while now, so we can present you with such interesting debates. I'd like to first tell you a bit about our debate society. At the end of this debate, we'll wait alongside the doors and give you some flyers, because we all need that, like, new societies need, we all know that new societies need new members. We're a small, friendly group of people, and we're going to teach you how to debate. Debate is basically an organized argument. So we'll teach you how you can argue in real life and actually win those arguments, which is arguably a very useful skill. We'll also teach you how to do some public speaking and some argumentation skills. Now you're probably wondering how that can help you as a student of English. Well, I'm also a student of English, so I can firsthand tell you that it helps enormously with essays, because essays are pretty much debate speeches written down, or with giving good presentations to your classmates, and it also helps you with being a good, well-rounded person. We're going to be talking about what it means to be a good, well-rounded person during the debate, and team government and team oppositions will have different ideas on that. But with the Debate Society, you can debate, you can travel. We've been to Tallinn this year, we're going to Mexico, so we can see the world with us. So join us every Wednesday at 6 p.m. at the university headquarters at Kongressinter. Now, let's talk about the format of how this debate will work. We have two teams, so government and opposition. They are composed of 3 people. On the government side, you have Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, and Government Whip. And on the opposition, you have Leader of the Opposition, Deputy Leader of the Opposition, and the Opposition Whip. They will each have 7-minute speeches, and 1 minute will be protected on each side. What does that mean? Who here has seen a debate before? So who's one of the older ones? Hopefully the debaters did. Okay. So, during your speech in a debate, the team that's not your own, so if you're government, the opposition, can ask you questions, can ask you to clarify something, can ask you to explain something in a bit more detail, can ask you something completely random. But you can't do that during the first minute or the last minute of someone's speech. So you have 5 minutes to do that. This will be announced by me clapping. So after first minute, you'll hear 1 clap. After the 6th minute, you'll hear a second clap. This means, the first clap means that the other team can start asking questions, and the second clap means that they need to stop asking. And at the end of 7 minutes, you'll hear 2 claps. This means that the speaker should probably stop speaking as soon as they possibly can and leave the stage. During the debate, sometimes debaters get excited about what they're saying, what their partner is saying, and they start clapping. Don't be alarmed, because clapping in debate isn't this, but it's banging on your table. So sometimes first-year students are a bit confused when they hear this during their first debate. Don't be confused, that's normal debate behavior. Banging on the tables is good. Okay, so are there any questions on how debates look? Or what's going to happen right now? I just want to say in advance, because some things that people will say might be a bit controversial, the debaters didn't pick a side they agree with. They were randomly chosen to represent whatever side they ended up on. Which means that some of the people here don't actually agree with what they're saying. Okay? This is not their personally held belief. So at the end of the debate, we'll have a discussion. We'll talk about your questions. We'll talk about what they did well, what they could have done better. During that time, please, if you have any issues with what they say right now, don't attack them personally, just attack their arguments, because they are probably expecting that. Okay? So now, if there are no questions, I invite Lincha, our Prime Minister, to open the floor and present the case that says in her name.
Okay, so welcome. Okay. I need to wait until she turns on her stopwatch, because this is time limited as well. Okay, so welcome everybody to today's debate. As you've already heard a couple of times, we'll be discussing something that's near and hopefully also dear to our hearts today. I would like to say at the beginning that free education is one of the core values of our society, of our social state, and we all can agree with that. But it cannot function unconditionally, and today we're going to explain why and how this is not working. So let me start by putting out there a couple of worrying facts about the conditions of the university today. So 35% of all students who enroll in university in Slovenia don't actually finish their studies. Second fact, 50% of Slovenians go to university, but we are still in the bottom 1/3 of countries according to the relative number of people with university degrees in the entirety of Europe. So this is what we're dealing with. Let me talk some more about status quo and explain why things actually need to change. So first of all, there are too many students right now in school who are taking advantage of the system and take up state funds. We all know some eternal students who enroll into university without actually meaning to graduate, and they prolong year after year still being enrolled, but actually don't benefit the society after. So then, secondly, there's the problem of unemployment after graduating, because there's such a large pool of people who have university degrees that we don't, many of us, when you enter this university, you are probably asked the question, but what are you going to do in life? There's just too many people in the field. Okay, on the flip side of the coin, we don't have enough people within the profession, like plumbers, engineers, etc. You have vocation, there's a large need for vocations and certain types of professions in a different pool, and Salma's going to talk about that a bit later. So we can, no thank you, we can move on. Some more on graduates. The degrees that we have at the end of our education lose value because, once again, there's too many graduates, and the quality actually of the university courses that we can be part of are going down rapidly because there's too many people. Probably some of you have the experience of being assigned to someone within, I don't know, a group project when you had to do all the work. So instead of having this dynamic between students, this is lost, and teachers have to deal with people who don't actually attend. They take up money, they take up time, and so on. Okay, so this is, no thank you. This is the model we propose. This is what we would put in place to have a system that would encourage students to do better and raise standards of tertiary education. So each student would be given a reasonable time frame. So let's say that's X years that takes a student to finish their degree in the shortest amount of time plus 3. This is the opposition might come here and say that's arbitrary. But we say this is enough buffer time for people to make mistakes. 3 years is more than enough of time to have this buffer space. No thank you. And it also means that acts would differ according to programs, so it would not discriminate different programs that may be harder, that may be longer to start with, like medicine students and so on. Of course, you'd be allowed to change your mind just like you are now without any bad things coming after you because of it. And additionally, we'd like to point out that we would put in place a committee which would deal with special cases, so that not everybody would have to pay back money.
Madam.
No, thank you. Once more. For cases of illness or pregnancy, illness can be physical or mental, etc. This committee would decide whether or not you qualify for someone that doesn't need to pay back their student funds. Now, let me explain why all of this actually makes a lot of sense. Tertiary education is free, but there is an agreement between a student and the government, or better yet, between a student or a society that allows this thing to work. Now, by paying taxes, society allows you to have this super standard education, but society also reasonably assumes that by doing so, you'd finish within this reasonable time frame. And when you finish, you can start, in turn, benefiting the society. So you can do your job well, because you were trained to do so, and you can start paying taxes in order to finish the circle and actually ensure that everyone else who is at university will also be given the chance to go to university. Okay, it's a sort. No, thank you. It's a sort of things. It goes rights and obligations go together. You always have responsibilities, and we want people who go to university to actually be able to handle these kinds of responsibility, because later on, the academics are those who are supposed to run the country or have managerial positions and so on. Okay, now to quickly go through some impacts that this would do. So, first of all, the quality of studying would rise on so many levels. You have motivated people in classrooms because they would actually want to be there, and because they have a deadline chasing them. There would be more resources to use per person given by the government, and more people. It would be more fair to the people who actually are determined to finish, because they would have this environment, they would have all of the opportunities to be able to finish their degree within an environment that helps them do so. Okay, also, subsequently, the degrees would gain on value, so you wouldn't be asked the question, why are you studying that? You won't be able to get a job. And you would be able to get a job in the field you were studying for, plus there would be more people able to do vocation work, so you wouldn't have to wait for a plumber to get to your house for 3 months. Thank you very much, that's all for me.
Thank you very much, Linda, for your speech, and I invite the leader of the opposition to present their case.
So why is university education free? It is free because we firmly believe that access to knowledge is a right independent of one's financial and personal position. Free education should therefore take into account the factors which might limit an individual to finish their studies on time. Now, but note, when we give someone a right, we must provide them with the means to exercise that right. If we do not do that, we are not providing equal rights to everyone, but we are in practice restraining this right to a privilege of the few. We in opposition believe that is morally culpable. Now, I will present two main arguments. Firstly, I will explain how this proposition will disproportionately target the poor and how it will reduce social mobility. And secondly, I will explain how this proposition will fail to save any government resources and how it fails on economic level. But firstly, I will address some points from Prime Minister. Now, they said that too many people have university degrees. Okay, even if we accept that, if we limit this number of university degrees by limiting the time frame in which an individual has to finish a degree, that will not proportionately affect all students, but will affect the disenfranchised and the poor most. I will explain that in my first argument. We need a systematic change. Not a simple change in the educational system which will limit the time frame for the education. Now, I will also address the idea of committees taking into account the personal positions of the students and how that solution will not work. So, how are we going to discriminate against the poor? Now, if I have to work to sustain my living while in college, I do not have sufficient amount of time to study or attend lectures, and therefore the probability of me finishing on time is much lower than the probability for someone who doesn't have to work while in their university education. So what are going to be the consequences for the poor? They will not be able to finish their education since they have to work in low qualified jobs to support their living while they are in the educational system. And now when they have to repay the debt of their university education, they will be even more burdened by the state and will therefore have to work in any jobs which they can get. Now, we will reduce social mobility by doing this, chaining the poor youth into low-paying jobs, preventing them from asserting themselves while providing benefits and the leverage of power to the privileged. Now, even if the government said that the most students, not yet, the most students prolong their degree and do not intend to finish it just for the benefits of the student status. Now, we need a comparison here. Having a job which requires a degree almost in all cases provides a better lifestyle than being a student relying on student jobs. Therefore, we can conclude that a vast majority of prolonged students still strive to finish their education, but cannot do that because of external factors, because of their personal factors, because of the situation in their family, or because of their financial position. Now, a brief comment on the committees which would decide on who has to pay for prolonging their education and who doesn't. Now, notice that those committees will inevitably have to draw a line somewhere. Anyone below that line will have to pay back the resources for their education to the state, and anybody above this line will be excluded from paying for their education. But notice that this line will inherently have to be arbitrary and will in and of itself cause further discrimination. Someone just below this line will be burdened with massive debt, while someone with just a marginally different position will be excluded from the punishment. We would therefore further discriminate based on arbitrary rules unrepresentative of the student's personal situation. Now, to my last argument, the economic impacts of the proposed model. Even if we forget about equality, even if we forget about justice, even if we forget the disenfranchisement of the poor and still implement this legislation, will it fulfill its main goal? That is, will it save the government any money? Now, we can reasonably assume that the students who will take more time than anticipated are in a minority. That means that the majority of students still finish their education in time. We're seeing this in practice. Now, let's take a hypothetical course for an example. If we have 100 students admitted in a certain course and only 80 attending this course, the price for the government will be almost the same as if only the 80 active students are admitted to this course. That is because we still need the same number of professors, the same number of assistants, the same number of employed personnel, the same number, I will take in a second, the same infrastructure, the same logistics. Yes,
of course. You have the same infrastructure for 20 students less. Does the infrastructure serve the 80 students better?
Well, that is not necessarily true. If these 20 students who are not attending lectures do not affect the quality of those lectures, since they are not present there, they cannot cause any harm to those lectures, and the professors can still give the knowledge needed to their students. Now, what will be the impact of this economic legislation? Now, excluding this non-attending minority will change the price for education only marginally for the government, while making a huge negative impact on the minority, which will be excluded from the educational system. Now, by doing this, we create a new social class, a new very vulnerable social class, which is forced to, again, work in low-paying jobs, untrained in any practical profession, just to pay off their debt. If we let them finish their degree, however, we will enable them to work in a more specialized sector, so on the long run they will contribute substantially more to the state budget, since their work will be more valuable. So the proposition in this debate is not only discriminatory and unjust, it also fails to fulfill its main objective, that is to save the government the resources which it provides for the free tertiary education. Now, my fellow speakers will explain how this proposal would put a negative pressure on all students, how it would discriminate against the longer and more difficult courses, and what negative effects it would have on society as a whole on practical level and on the long run. Now, because we believe education is a right rather than a privilege, and because we think personal circumstances should not play a role in access to education, we beg you to support side opposition. Right, proud protocol. Thank you.
And today we prepare a speech and I invite the leader of government to defend his case.
Further on in my speech, I'll explain to you how entering tertiary education is actually a contract you make with the government. How the government, with paying your studies, can actually impose some demands upon you for giving you that money. Secondly, I'm going to explain to you how limiting the amount of students who have nothing to do because they don't want to finish their studies and just want to enjoy the benefits is going to improve the job market on two different levels. But firstly, let me tackle a couple of points made by the leader of the opposition, who mainly and mostly brings up the issue of discrimination against the poor. What we are lacking most of all in his analysis is why being poor prolongs your studies for 4 years. Because that is what we're talking here. If they fall out of our model to actually have to pay back their education, they need to study for 4 more years. That is under our model. So they never explained why that happens. Secondly, we see within our society, within status quo, the poorer students are the ones who are trying the hardest to finish as fast as they can so they can improve their social status. Thus, they are the ones who are actually working towards our model to finish university as fast as possible. And thirdly, we have a large amount of social benefit structures to help those students. We have subsidies for food, we have subsidies for transport, for accommodations, and we can improve on that with that little money that we actually save here. So we don't see how poor are here an issue at all unless they explain us how being poor makes you study 4 years more automatic. Secondly, they talk about economic impact, how we don't save any money. Well, we save some money and we say that is enough because we're also improving the economic, not the economic, but the quality of the educational system, as was greatly explained by Lencha. And secondly, we're improving our social landscape in general by improving the job market. And how are we doing that? First off, by increasing the number of students in vocational schools. What we see today is people who finish high school have no idea what they want to do with their lives. So what they do is they go to a university. They go to a university, and that is how we have 50% of our youth going to universities. And 35% of those going to universities never finishing. Never ending their studies, either dropping after a couple of years or studying for 6, 7, 8, 9 years and then dropping out, which is even worse. What happens under our model is these people will be forced to think a lot longer and harder about if that is a way they want to go. If that is something they want to do with their lives, because if they are not sure, they will not pick a path that can have serious repercussions for their further lives. They will think harder if A, university is something they want to do, B, if they want to do anything else in their lives. What this means is that the people who will enroll in universities will actually be interested in their studies because they will think longer and harder about what they want to do. And secondly, the people who will not, who will not enroll into universities will go to vocational schools, thus increasing the number of people in the vocational schools, and which I'm going to explain a bit later, but because Mattia insists so hard.
Sure. People at 18, he says, don't have a clue what they want to do. People who are poor at 18 and don't know what they want to do with their lives are less likely to actually risk going to university at all, which effectively means that poor people are the ones who are going to go to vocational schools, and rich people are the ones who can actually take the risk.
And why going to a vocational school is that bad if after going to university, studying for 6 years, you end up flipping burgers with a diploma from social science university? That is the thing we want to avoid. Going to university just for having a diploma. That is something we don't want within our society, and something we're actually solving under our model. This is the point I'm getting further on in this very argument. So what we see is people choosing the thing they actually want, actually can and will do in their lives. No, sit down. So by increasing the number of people going to vocational schools because they see they're probably not going to finish university, so better that I go to a vocational school, what we get by that is a better distribution of jobs across the market, because we see way too many people with even low degrees. Low degrees cannot get a job after finishing a law university, not to speak about social sciences. What we get here is a better distribution of the jobs over the entire spectrum by people actually picking vocational schools again, not just getting a diploma for the sake of the diploma. And secondly, we get a better distribution of education as well, because we see way too many people with tertiary education than our society needs. What we get by this is people actually getting jobs after they finish their school, be it whatever, actually getting a permanent job and actually having a life of their own. And my second point, which is going to be extremely brief, is about student jobs. We don't see a problem with student jobs as they are. We see a problem with having as many students as we have who can do 40 hours of student work per week. That is a regular job. But because it is under student privileges, it's cheaper for the employers to use those. Thus, we see clogging up the job market by students. Under our model, students cannot afford those working hours more than 1 year, thus reducing the amount of student jobs, thus increasing the amount of permanent jobs, and thus we save this country. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Salma, for your speech, and I invite Deputy Leader of Opposition to defend her case here.
Alright, according to Salvo, we should just send people to vocational schools and they will have their jobs, they will have their happy life, and suddenly our country will be automatically solved. But let me tell you something. The policemen have 600 euros of monthly payment. The average flat in Ljubljana costs 1,000 euros. Tell me, how will people with vocational education actually be able to live in under current system? We believe that they are not solving any kind of problems. They are just creating many new ones and masking the real issue that basically people can't get their jobs because the situation in the world is, I'm sorry to say that, shitty. But we believe that deprivileging the poor, disenfranchised, and people who are simply unable for different circumstances to achieve their diploma on time, it will create a much bigger outcry, it will discriminate people, and it will not provide them nothing more quality education. They say, Samo also says that poor people have the biggest incentive to finish the university on time so they can create better lives for themselves. But I'm sorry, being poor has some serious psychological consequences. Poor people are much more likely to be alcoholics because actually 60% of alcoholics are poor people who weren't able to succeed in life and therefore were depressed. People who are poor have almost always a much greater history of mental illnesses, which is another factor which is, let's be real, highly discriminated still in our society and is many times not perceived as a legitimate reason not to be able to finish the education. They also forget that mental illnesses impact some people differently than the others. For example, people with neurotic disorders can be able to finish their education and have 8s and 9s at their uni, like for example myself. But some other people are unable to even pass that because they have some other circumstances. I'm lucky enough to have parents who can support me, but some people cannot support themselves and have to do like double shifts, triple shifts, just so they can be able to live and maybe afford a car so they can get to the university. Not yet. Okay, so what we also tell you is that basically the committee they are planning to set up, I see even bigger issue with that than my previous speaker has saw with it. So committees have some arbitrary lines, but as we see with practice in Slovenia currently in the university system, this arbitrary line and the circumstances which can enable students not to pay or to pass to another year are very strict. For example, I know someone whose mother has recently died, and she was only allowed to lose 2 more credit points in order to pass to the next year. It doesn't seem humane to me, and I don't believe how under their plan, in their committee, the conditions will be any more humane for people who are facing difficulties and who have actually no support. Some also tells us that state provides great scholarships and stuff, you know. But, sorry, you know the Zoisova stipendia thing? I actually got a gold medal, whatever, from history and wasn't awarded it because it was social science. Secondly, it is only 100 euros or something, and the person cannot actually really benefit from 100 euros. The social scholarship for poor people is kind of 80 euros plus if they are really in a bad circumstances, and the line is very low. If you have some land, which basically only grass can grow on that, it is also perceived as a kind of wealth that so the state can take the money from you. And we do not see how this is just. We only see another pool for discriminating people who are already deprivileged and are not able to go out from this circle of poverty, and they are further enabling them to do so. What I also can say is that, as always, in our lovely dear Slovenia, people who have connections, people who have money, can always abuse the system. So we can kind of assume that sons and daughters from people like, you know, certain mayors of certain cities, not to speak names, will be able to kind of avoid those kind of sanctions. So, to finally move to my argument, we believe that it would basically bring much more stress and much more disincentive for students who actually want to finish their education and are unsure of themselves if they can even make it. We believe that university program is actually such a stressful thing to do, especially if you want to do some stuff besides that. People who provide us with jobs normally don't just look at our diplomas, but they actually look if we have some achievements, for example, in a debate, if we have achievements in science, if we can research and so on. But at the end of the day, we cannot do that if we are constantly afraid, if we will have to pay 15,000 euros per day, as example, costs medicine, I believe, and we cannot study properly if we are constantly under stress, and our profession path is therefore seriously limited. We believe that it is unfair to impose such a burden on a student. Secondly, they kind of give us away the right to self-decision and to deciding what we want to do in life. Maybe we want to travel for two years. Maybe I want to have, like, I don't know, stuff. And we cannot finish our education in time. But that doesn't mean we won't do our job properly. If we need a bit more time, maybe if I'm a little bit less intelligent than someone else, I will just need a bit more time. It doesn't mean that I won't be a good teacher, a good psychologist, and so on. I just need my time, and I just need some space to finish it. And therefore, we believe that we cannot take away this right to the students, to the poorest and the most disenfranchised. And therefore, I beg you to oppose the motion.
Thank you, Lucia, for your speech, and I'll invite the government whip to conclude the debate for the government side. Here.
Okay, so I think we can all agree that tertiary education is a pretty neat thing. We also all agree that tertiary education being free is also a really, really neat thing. Do we, however, think that this right does not come with obligations and should never come with obligations? No, because tertiary education is specific and different. And this is what we've been talking about, and this is what side opposition has yet to deal with, right? We tell you that we do have access, we do have the ability to exercise the right to tertiary education. We give people 2 or 3 more years past like n number of years to, because everyone stumbles, everyone makes mistakes. But what we think the primary difference is because tertiary education stems from societal needs, right? It stems from what society needs to work, and it also means that it's supposed to be for people who, like, hopefully after they finish their studies are going to be, like, above average in the intellectual department. These are people who are going to have responsible jobs in managerial positions, being lawyers, being doctors, being, like, the cream of the crop, helping the country progress. So we think it's fair to demand a certain amount of responsibility from them at the point where they're deciding what they're going to study and how society is going to spend their resources on them, right? It means it's fair to demand this responsibility back. Now, we say this is a give and take situation, right? We say the government has the right to demand from you to finish your studies in a certain time. Now, Luchka tells you that, well, a person can do the job just as well if they finish in like 15 years or 5 years. But we tell you that in those 15 years that you're paying for someone to finish their studies, you can already, with that money, you can already educate 2 more people who are going to do the job just as well or better and do it for longer because they finished their studies on time. And it's fair to those 2 people that we give them these resources and we don't keep squandering resources on people who don't want to finish on time. We tell you this is somewhat like a contract between the government and the student, right? So for example, if you paid a mover truck to come pick up your stuff on the 26th and they showed up on the 28th, while the job is still getting done, you would still not pay them for their services rendered. And this is the same thing. And on the last point, when they talk about how, well, but people also need to do other things, right? People also need to be like good in debate or sports, or like we don't want to take away their choice of like free decision making. We tell you that, okay, fine, people have a right to like decide, but they also need to prioritize, right? Tertiary education and your like formal education needs to come first. So either if you can't handle all of your extracurriculars, drop some, or go to a college that you're actually capable of finishing in N+2 or N+3 years. It's as simple as that. And it's a responsibility we're willing to take because of the positive benefits. Now the positive benefits, if you recall, that we talked about and that have gone completely unrebutted, are the fact that if you think about it, we're wasting so many resources and so many job positions in terms of people choosing colleges that they aren't, and at the end of the day, gonna finish. So then you have a surplus of certain professions that aren't as needed, which people choose so they can prolong their student benefits for another 4 or 5 years. So at the end of the day, you end up with like 200 culturologists or like 200 tourism managers, but you have to wait for like 6 months to get a decent electrician, and then you also have to pay that electrician more than like your average doctor or lawyer gets on average in the first 5 years of their job. I mean, per month. You don't actually have to pay the electrician for one service. You get it. So what we tell you is that this is going to bring a better availability of services in terms of distribution in the job market. We tell you that it's going to fix the status quo where certain companies can't give out in the subsidies that they want to give out for people to study in a certain vocation. And we would fill these jobs and we would better the economy. We would get more appropriate people and more appropriate jobs. And all in all, as Samo said, fix the country. Okay, moving on to the third point about poverty and how we're supposedly disenfranchising the poor, right? On face value, I can see how this might seem logical. But like, let's rewind the facts for a bit, okay? So, we're talking about 2 or 3 extra years. Now, this literally means you can take after almost every year of study, another year to work for a whole year to get enough money. We also tell you that we're not only talking about like choice scholarships, we're also talking about all of the things that we take for granted in our country. So like boni, like subsidized travel, like subsidized housing within dorm rooms, which makes it extremely easy if you are entitled to these subsidies, if you are less well off, to study. And we tell you that in the cases that they're talking about where someone would be physically prohibited from studying because of poverty in and of itself, we tell you that if these people are so poor, then they wouldn't be able to study under the status quo as well, right? Because we give you a lot of subsidies, and even if this happens, we also tell you that we do have these committees who may, I'll take you in 15 seconds. So we tell you that even if there's an arbitrary line, there is a line, we do help the students who have objective problems. And you know what else is arbitrary? Randomly letting 35% of the people who have no intention of graduating clog up resources for the students who actually want to finish, who actually are motivated to finish, and who deserve the resources. Yes, Pushnik.
But when people have to risk paying a huge debt when they enroll, less people are going to take that risk. And those people who are not going to be able to take the risk are usually people who are not exactly millionaires.
No, we tell you the people who are not going to take that risk are the people who are not sure what they want to study and are not sure if they want to finish the program and are not sure if they're capable of finishing the program. We tell you that the people, in fact, there's a low amount of people who draw from this pool. We tell you that we limit the impacts on poor people, and also tell you that these are not the problematic group we're talking about, right, in the status quo. These are the people who are usually more inclined to finish their studies as fast as possible to get a good income. And lastly, what we tell you is we have better outcomes in terms of education, because we're getting back the investments from those 35% of people who never finish their studies. It means that we will have better student structure, a more cohesive, more environment in terms of studying, which is more inclined to a better working environment. And at the end of the day, because principally we think that this is the right thing to do, and practically because we show you benefits, we are very proud of those.
Thank you, Peter, for your speech, and now I invite the opposition whip to conclude his side and the entire debate.
Yeah. I like to take time with my scarf, with my university degree, with all the things that matter in life. And I'm also going to take time with this speech because I believe in university. I believe that university as an institution is something that I and my team, that we want to protect for the benefit of the society, for the principle, and for all the practical effects. And because of that, I shall divide my speech into 4 points. And the first point, coincidentally, is going to be the question of what is university in our society, or what do we want university to be. The university as an institution is an institution of learning, institution of theory, and the university, historically speaking, is the place where every major social push happened. It's the place where every major scientific breakthrough occurs. University is where one gets to make the most of himself, even if one does not finish. Why we are all enrolled in university, it's not just to get a job in the end. Most of us don't even know what kind of a job we're going to be working in. It's to explore, it's to self-actualize, it's to broaden our horizons, it's to make the most of the miserable human condition that we inhabit. And what that proposition wants to do with university today is that they want to dismantle it in this new, no thank you, elitist apparatus. And we oppose that. Why? Because, no thank you, we believe that everyone gets a chance. And now let's analyze this debate in the 3 following points with the set principle being explained. They had 3 problems that they want to tackle at the beginning of their speeches. They said that they don't like people not finishing, even though they promise the society that they're going to finish. Second of all, they say that they don't like the unemployment. And third of all, they say that they don't like the diminishing quality that we're observing apparently in university today. Let's start with the first one. Not enough people finish, they say. Let us first identify why people don't finish. They say they don't finish because they don't know why they're there. They don't know why they did enroll in a certain university. We hear that those people who realize that they're not at a correct institution, so on and so forth, are the people who are going to usually switch the major, switch the faculty soon enough. So those people who do not finish are not entirely composed of people who just don't know what they're doing and don't actually like the subjects that they're taking. We have much more nuance in our analysis. We have more detailed analysis that is more realistic. We say that people who usually don't finish their education are people who have other focuses besides university. But what kind of other focuses are there? If we are speaking about people who take sports, who do sports, those people have usually extra statuses and are like portrayed almost as gods, as the most elite part of the university. They're not the ones that have problem finishing. Look, who are the ones who have problem finishing? It is those people who have to work a job besides going to university. It is those people who, after working the whole shift in the afternoon, don't have the energy or the time to study because they have to have that cigarette break. They have to go get that beer because otherwise they cannot take the pressure mentally. Those are the people that do not actually finish university usually in status quo. But let's go on, let's go to the principle, right? So what? So what if people don't finish university, right? Side proposition says that people have a certain agreement with the society, then based on that agreement, I'm going to finish university, that they have to, finish or pay up. We say, okay, it's a fair principle. But debate is not about absolutes, it's about, making trade-offs. And I say that if I have equality for people, inclusivity, and not following through with the agreements on the other hand, I shall always stand for equality, for giving everyone a chance, because I think that such a world is a better world, and such a principle is a stronger principle. No, thank you. And in the end, what shall their motion actually achieve? It shall not achieve the fact that more people are going to finish universities. No, it shall achieve the fact that less people are actually going to enroll. Because when you know that you're not able to pay off the debt of the university degree beforehand, there's a smaller chance of you actually taking that risk. And when Pero says, well, you have bonds, you have subsidies, things like that. Those things are not enough if you're living outside of Ljubljana, if you have no place to stay, because student dorms are already overcrowded, because money is not easy to get by when there's so little work, so on and so forth. So if you're not entitled to studying, taking that risk is the one extra step that makes less people actually enroll, which is something we do not want out of principle. Second point. Unemployment. Let's first of all ask ourselves, why do we have unemployment currently in our world? Do we have it because we have poor universities or people enrolling in universities so much? No. Unemployment is a thing of macroeconomics. It's a thing that happens because of global economic climate. Youth unemployment throughout Europe is a problem nowadays in all the countries, even in countries that do not have free tertiary education in status quo, which means that the problem that they're identifying in a minute is probably not connected to what they're trying to change, but he would disagree.
Yes, of course I would, because we have no way to use 40 people with culturologist diploma per year in our society.
Let me come to
That
the
is
point.
part of the
Thank you, Samo.
unemployment.
Thank you, Samo. And then they say that unemployment happens. How are they solving? They say that they are going to solve that with more vocational work. Let me tell you two things. First of all, we sadly live in a capitalist society, which means that if there is a current discrepancy with the amount of laborers in one specific field, it means that the market is actually going to regulate that, and more people are going to be incentivized to actually change that and go into those fields. Don't laugh, it's a legit economic theory. And second of all, if that's a problem that they see, I would rather propose they incentivize the people to go into those fields, not ban people, prevent people from going to universities. And finally, I don't think that they achieve less unemployment on their side. I think that they actually achieve an elitist economy where the poor people get to flip burgers and the rich people get to have fun in libraries talking about Hegel and Plato. But the final point, the point about quality. They say that because instead of 100 people now we're going to have 80 people enrolled, the quality is going to increase dramatically, so dramatically that it's going to justify the motion. I beg to differ. I think that the only reason that they're making that argument is because he is from the Faculty of Medicine, and I agree. In the Faculty of Medicine and some other faculties, more people means more trouble because there's probably not enough cadavers to dissect. On the majority of universities, this is not a problem. As long as there is space in lecture rooms and lecture halls, people can learn in the same quality as they did before. And even if we sacrifice some quality for the benefit and merit of having more people attending universities, I say this is not a problem. Because I stand for an inclusive society. I stand for a society where everyone gets a chance, and I do not leave any man behind. This is why I'm proud to oppose. Thank you.
Okay. So this was it from our side. Now comes the audience participation. So are there any questions that you would like to ask our debaters? Any thoughts you'd like to share? Any points you liked, any points you disagreed with?
Actually, I'd like something answered because I think nobody actually talked about it. What's the current situation? The current situation isn't that someone will have the student status for 15 years or something. The current situation is you get the student status for each year you're enrolled, and only one extra year if you switch programs once or repeat a year, and that's it. So the maximum you can have in a, let's say, 3-year span is 4. More than that, you can't actually get the status unless you pay for the program. So how is this spending more money than a program that would allow you to have n years plus 3 with all the benefits of the status for all the 3 years?
Well, the current status isn't that you get just one extra year with your status. That is by the clear regulation of the university. But if you use up all the loopholes and everything, you can get up to 4 extra years of student status without paying anything.
I wish you would have told me that 3 years ago, because I literally jumped every loophole I could and I didn't get any.
Well,
that's why you need law.
Wait, so apparently you need to be a professional in faculty law just so you can get those extra 4 years? So people who actually go the effort and spend like several months getting the knowledge of faculty infrastructure just to be able to get those years, I mean, come on, they sort of deserve it for investing that much effort.
well, it's hard to say that they're deserving it, but it's a lot of time they're using it just so they can keep the cheap labor. So they can work as cheap labor for other employers, because it's much easier to live under the social security of being a student and maybe one time finishing. And if you use up all those options, you are basically switching faculties, switching schools, switching programs from university programs to vyššie školské programy, I don't know the English expression for it, etc. So you're
But that's
still...
not tertiary education, is it?
It is. It counts as tertiary education still. You have the same status as a university student. Now, why is that? Why are those students a problem? Because they are basically being phantom students. The resources are still allocated to them, still wasted, but they're not making anything out of it. That is the main issue.
Okay,
Does that answer your question?
yeah, it does. It opens up a new one, but I think that we should have a chance to answer first.
Could we perhaps do we perhaps get some information about maybe how many of those 35% or so are from socially endangered backgrounds? That would maybe open up new possibilities of talking about this issue. You know, if we saw the stats, not just arguing on emotion and principles alone.
I mean, practically, I feel like you could find that information on like source or like the specific information we found where it was on OECD. But like, no, to answer your question, I don't have those statistics particularly. But like, I feel at face value the logic or like what we commonly assume to be the main reason you don't finish studies is not the fact that you're like in such an existential crisis that you physically cannot allocate time to studying, but rather other factors like, you know, trying to work for longer or any other things we talked about. Yeah.
Don't you think that's a bit exaggerating? Like, you have certain people that work so they can provide for themselves during studying, yeah, sure, but the conditions of working through students are not always good, and there are loads of people who don't pay, but you're still working for them. So don't you think if I worked, for example, over a year at somebody and he didn't pay me, and I worked my butt off, and I don't get paid, I didn't do school, I didn't get paid, so I could do school, so what am I supposed to do then?
Sam, I think you have some experience.
Oh, I have a lot of
Personal experience?
Personal experience with
Not
that.
paying or not getting paid.
Not getting paid.
Oh,
But
yeah,
also,
that's true.
Studentsky Service is doing something against that. You have Neplachniki and such, and they're actually making a system where, I don't know if you've noticed, any of you who also work through Studentsky Service, they made a system where they actually get the money from employers. They don't pay you directly. If they do, that's blunt labor. But if, you know, so Studentsky Service demands money from those companies, and then they pay you. So for instance, your employer would send in your hours to Studentsky Service. Immediately they would pay you, and you get a text message, you know, woo, you got paid. And then your employer would actually pay to Studentsky Service. So this was a problem, and they're tackling it this way. So it's getting a lot better. But just look at Neplachniki. Guys, just do it.
Do that and book your hours. Every time
Yeah,
you work,
you work.
book your hours and record it yourself. Not just leave it to your employer. Because that is why I didn't get paid, because he lost the sheet with my 70 hours of work. So yeah.
And like if you do black market work, sign for every check you get. For every money you get, sign a piece of paper so you're all clear on what money you got and what money you didn't get.
I've got a question. When you said that we should limit the amount of pupils that go to the university, and you said that only the students that really want to study or want to complete their studies will go there, and the rest will go to vocational schools. But that means that we should limit the enrollment into gymnasia, not in university, because after gymnasia you need to go to university, or otherwise you won't have a job.
I mean, I think in the context of this, in the context of this debate, like obviously we're not like all, you know, whoop-de-doo for this motion for like educational purposes. We had to like play the bad guys. I think if we're debating this particular motion, you could argue that that would come as a consequence of the shifting trends of how people enroll in tertiary education and like the redistribution of people enrolling in tertiary education in different programs within tertiary education and the vocational schools. As a consequence, less people would enroll in gymnasia. Although I think you could phrase it the other way around, and that would be a completely legitimate debate in and of itself.
And I think if you enroll into gymnasia, this is usually, I mean, this is always right after primary school. You don't know what you want to do yet. You take those 4 years to decide. University is not always the, and with you can always, after matura, you can always re-qualify as something. You can always take some tests at vocational schools. So you can always take a step back.
We should eliminate this idea that it's a step back.
Yeah.
Because it's not. It's a step in a different direction, but not back. So I think.
So you can.
Sorry.
You can still go the vocational way, even with like a high school degree.
Ultimately, what we were trying to put across, which may or may not have happened, is in a sense that it's sort of this mentality that, oh, you have to enroll in tertiary education, and that it's like a necessity for everyone to do so, is false, because there are like other options. And we, through this motion, like this particular model which was given to us, we felt like you could, to a certain extent mediate this, like, what's the word? Okay.
Word for what?
Last year.
Like sort of this gambling, right? With I'm just going to go study something and everything is probably going to turn out fine. So you'd get like redistribution into fields that people are specifically interested in, or in vocational schools, sort of destroying the myth that like, you need to have a university degree to be happy.
Yeah.
But actually, I have some personal experience here. If you enroll in engineering high school, which means you're highly sought after, your wage is about 800 euros, and that's it. That's brutal.
Well,
So-
your diploma is not really going to improve the fact. My law degree is looking at 800 starting pay, and
That's
improving
what the
if
engineering
I
is
get lucky and if I get internship, which is unpaid. So the prospects with a diploma are not much
That's
better.
true, that's true. It depends then which diploma, right?
Yeah, and which field?
Not
of
even
study.
that. It depends on how lucky and well connected are you.
I don't think so. I think that the previous year I was at engineering university, and their scholarships basically put out at the start of every year, and those are substantial scholarships.
Engineering.
In the engineering field, because you're highly sought after with robotics and everything.
Yeah. But
it seems like so absurd to go studying just something so you can provide for yourself, even though you don't really like that stuff.
Yeah.
It kind of forces you into that.
My friend went to study construction work. Just he hated everything with construction. Just went to get a job. A month later, the markets crashed. So now he is unemployed with a degree in construction. So
Adulting is hard.
good luck with your reading. Anyone else? Yeah.
I have a question. Why do you keep on saying that somebody else doesn't get the chance to study because another person who, in your minds, decided they're not going to finish studying took their place? They qualified for this place. They took their matura test probably, and they got enough points to get enrolled into this position. So how can you say that they didn't qualify or that they didn't take up their rightful place? And you don't just decide you're not gonna study until the end. It happens sometimes, and it's not a predisposition of being poor, and it's not a predisposition of being mentally disabled, or it's not any kind of disability that just happens predispositionally. It can happen during your studying, or it can happen because a tragedy happen. So if people die during their studies, are they taking up someone else's space? Did they take up your resources? Did they take government money? They didn't plan on it. You don't plan on dropping your studies unless you're a con artist, but you really don't. It happens. How can you say that we are taking up someone's space when we personally qualified for it and we picked it?
I mean, yes. I would agree. Again, I'm not paid to do this. I'm getting not paid to do this. But yeah, sort of like the logic that could be argued here is that if you don't finish, there was a lot of money invested into your doing, like, I don't know, 3, 4, 5 years. Resources for all of your subsidies, for all of the work that you had to do at uni, and this is finances that could have been used or reallocated to people who would finish their studies on time. That was sort of the logic. But again, I totally agree with what you're saying. It does
I'm
happen.
not taking government resources. If I am doing actual labor while studying, I am actually paying money with taxes. I am paying for teachers to be here. I am paying for university. I am paying for my studies. Just because I don't have to pay for the actual studies I get married, it doesn't mean that.
With your student job, you're not paying regular taxes. You're paying only insurance for disabled, in case you get disabled, and your health insurance. That's the only things you cover with your student job. So technically, with your student job, you're not paying the teachers. It's the rest of the society that's paying the teachers for you. And secondly, on that being your rightful place, that is where we try to establish the discourse that this is a contract. Government says that if you finish the studies in this and this time, we're going to pay it for you. If you don't, well, you have to pay for it yourself. That is the idea that we were trying to get across, that education is a contract where I agree with the state that they're going to provide everything for me in this time if I finish it in the allocated time. We also included all these things as safeguards, such as 3 extra years and the committee for special cases, etc., etc. Just to tackle all the cases that could happen, to cover as much as we can, because we can't cover everything. But as soon as you look at tertiary education as an agreement between you and the state, then it kind of makes sense that if you don't finish that agreement, to kind of return what was invested into you for you to end up, or your end on that agreement. That is the idea that we were trying to get across. Does that at least in some part answer your question?
Anyone else? Well, if any of you have any further questions and you're just like a bit too shy to speak in front of a crowd, we're going to hang around for a bit and you can come talk to us individually. Just find us either here or in front of the uni. Thank you.